What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Figures of Sport. I am super excited for this episode right here, mostly because of the fact that you guys specifically requested it. So I am super pumped to get this episode out to you guys. Man, shout out to all of the people that participated in that poll. As I mentioned in the last episode, I posted a poll over on Instagram just to kind of gauge the temperature of you guys, the people that are most important, the supporters, and you guys wanted a special trade deadline episode. So guess what? You ask and you shall receive. I am doing this especially for you guys. So I'm super thankful that you guys care so much to uh, participate in that poll and to watch this content. Means the world to me. So um, we're going to have a great episode in store for you guys today. So get ready because we've got a lot to talk about today. But once again, guys, thank you so much for being a part of the Figures of Sport family. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. I wouldn't be doing this if you guys hadn't asked so many times over the last couple of years. Where's the podcast? When's it coming back? We miss it. So super thankful to you guys. So definitely wanted to start this episode off with a huge shout out to you guys, the supporters of the Figures of Sport podcast and of me personally. So I really appreciate you guys. Now, like I said, we've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in. Man, the MLB trade deadline was today, um, or I guess when you guys are seeing this, since it'll be posted on Friday morning. Yesterday, what a day yesterday was. I constantly was scrolling on my Twitter or X, whatever you guys want to call it, all day long, just refreshing. What a crazy day, full of trade after trade after trade after trade. Um, Man, I mean, so many jaw-dropping trades, so many shocking trades, so many trades where I was extremely underwhelmed. Um, but that kind of leads me into the way I want to structure this episode for you guys, actually. So first things first, we're gonna separate this into about four categories. This episode. One of them is going to be a segment where we talk about teams that had solid deadlines. Another one is we're going to talk about teams that had underwhelming deadlines. And then we're going to talk about the biggest losers and the biggest winners of the trade deadline this year. So, um, man, guys, we've got a lot for you guys to talk about. But first things first, we're going to save the winners and losers for the end of the episode. The first thing I want to talk about, honestly, is the teams that had a solid deadline. Didn't do too much, but didn't do little. You know, solid overall. Solid deadlines. They did what they needed to do, and we can't be too upset at that. So, the first things first, we're going to talk about the Tampa Bay Rays. They definitely had a solid deadline. They traded uh, Griffin. They acquired Griffin Jacks from the Minnesota Twins, and they traded away Taj Bradley, a guy who was a highly ranked pitching prospect for them, but he has been struggling as of late. So I think it was maybe Taj Bradley needed a change of scenery, and I think it could be good for him. Honestly, I mean, hey, the last time that the Rays traded the Twins a starting pitcher, he ended up being a stud. Shout out Joe Ryan. So yeah, I mean, I think that was a solid addition for the Rays to add Griffin Jacks. He's a guy that is a very high leverage bullpen arm. He honestly can. He can definitely close out games for them, and I think he's going to be pretty effective. They're not too far out of a wild card spot. They are in a tough division with the Blue Jays, the Yankees, and the Red Sox all competing at high levels this year. But I think the Rays, with the addition of Griffin Jacks, he can definitely be a guy that can solidify. Um, their bullpen and help them close out some games. So great addition by them to join in on the Minnesota Twins fire sale, which we'll get to a little bit later in the episode. But solid addition. No complaints with that one for me. The next deal, the Chicago White Sox traded starting pitcher Adrian Hauser to the Tampa Bay Rays for three prospects: Curtis Mead, Duncan, David, and Ben Peoples. So, I mean, Adrian Hauser, he was a guy that the Chicago White Sox signed from free agency, and he's had an excellent season so far with a two-ish ERA, and he's pitched great. And honestly, he did what the White Sox kind of expected him to do: go out and get you some prospects at the deadline. So shout out to Adrian Hauser for helping out my squad, get some added depth to that organization. But yeah, I mean, honestly, again, a solid addition, especially with them losing Taj Bradley, adding a guy like Adrian Hauser. Not a bad acquisition whatsoever. And like I said, he's been having an excellent season. So it really could be a great addition for them. Like I said, Taj Bradley's been rough around the edges as of late. Adding a guy like Hauser, who's been so steady since he joined the White Sox, hey, could be a sneaky good addition for them as well. They also participated in a couple other trades. One of them was a three-team trade between the Reds and the Dodgers. They added Hunter Fiducia and Brian Van Bell. The full trade was that Zach Littell got sent to the Reds from the Rays, and then the Dodgers acquired Paul, might butcher the name here, but Paul Gervais, Adam Serwinowski, and Ben Warvert. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't really have any complaints with this deal either. Rays are getting a little bit more depth. Can't complain with that at all. And then they also traded Jose Caballero, who's one of the top players in the league in stolen bases, to the New York Yankees for Everson Pereira and a player to be named later. So, I mean, that was a solid acquisition for them. Just again, adding more depth and trading a guy like Caballero, who um, to the Yankees. Again, the player to be named later. Obviously, we don't know who that is right now, but not bad moves by the Rays at all. Like I said, they're not too far out of a wild card spot this year. They have a long road ahead of them with the teams that are in the thick of that race as well. But overall, solid deadline for the Tampa Bay Rays. Really have no complaints. They didn't do nothing, and they didn't do a lot. Solid overall. So we'd like to see what the Rays look like at the end of the year. Guys like Hauser and Griffin Jacks, like I said, great additions, and who knows, maybe they can win them a couple extra games this year, so help them kind of stay in the thick of that race. But the next team we're going to talk about is the Texas Rangers, and boy, oh boy, if you guys didn't see the supposed breaking news that Adolis Garcia was traded to the Mets, ugh, yeah, not the best way to get things out, man. Yeah, there was for those of you who don't know, there was a tweet by a reporter on X who typically he does sometimes have the inside scoop on some players, but this time he was just wrong, and he tweeted out that Adolis Garcia was traded to the New York Mets, but he was not traded to the New York Mets. And he actually wrote it as breaking, BRAKING. So of course the Texas Rangers had to have a little fun with that, and on X or Twitter, whatever you guys want to call it, they went and posted a lineup and said breaking tonight's lineup, and they highlighted Adolis Garcia. So just poking fun. That was a funny moment there. But overall, I mean, like I was saying in this segment here, solid deadline. I mean, the Rangers added Merrill Kelly from the Diamondbacks. Great acquisition for them. I am a huge fan of Merrill Kelly. He's been super, super solid this season for the Diamondbacks, and now he's going to be able to pitch for a highly competitive team with the Rangers, who, again, are in the thick of that AL wildcard race as well. So he was a great get for them, and he's going to really help solidify that rotation for them. So big get by the Texas Rangers. They also were able to acquire a couple relievers to kind of shore up their bullpen. Danny Collum from the Minnesota Twins for starting pitcher Garrett Horn. Um, you know, the Twins. We'll talk about the Twins in a little bit, but Danny Collum has been excellent. Great arm, left-handed reliever in the bullpen. He's going to be super solid for them. They have a couple guys, that have been pretty decent, but one of their top relievers, uh, Chris Martin, actually was placed on the IL. He'll be out for like 4 to 6 weeks, I believe. So getting a guy like Danny Collum to kind of come in and not only take that spot, but be an excellent high leverage reliever on top of that. Great get for them for sure. They also acquired Phil Maton from the St. Louis Cardinals, and again, solid acquisition. Shoring up that bullpen is always something that you're going to see teams doing when they're in the playoff race, because of the fact that when October comes, you need to have a bullpen that can shut opposing teams down. And I think that the Rangers are, they're definitely going to be able to at least try to do that with some of the bullpen arms that they now have. So, solid deadline by the Rangers as well. I mean, absolutely no complaints. Grabbed a top starting pitcher that was on the market and grabbed two solid relievers as well. So, shout out to the Rangers for doing what they needed to do. Next thing we're going to talk about is the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays, the team that is the best team in the American League East, the best team in the American League in general. They got better for sure. They definitely got better. They added starting pitcher Shane Bieber from the Cleveland Guardians for starting pitcher prospect Kyle Steven. Shane Bieber hasn't pitched since 2024, recovering from injury, but he's said to come back in the next few weeks as he's on a rehab stint right now. So, if the Blue Jays are able to get any glimpse of the Shane Bieber we've seen of old, former Cy Young winner, if he's anything like his former self, this is a fantastic grab from the Blue Jays, buying, while the value is low as well. I think it was definitely much needed, and obviously, it's hard to not want to buy in on a guy with the talent that Shane Bieber has. So, great get from the Blue Jays. They also added, again, we're going to talk about the Twins later, but they added Louis Varland and Ty France. Again, another bullpen arm for the Blue Jays that the Twins have an abundance of, that they were able to get rid of. So they got rid of Louis Varland and Ty France, just adding some more depth in the infield at that first base position. And then they also were able to add Brandon Valenzuela, a catcher prospect from the Padres, for Will Wagner. And again, we're going to talk about some of these other teams a little bit later in the episode. But Brandon Valenzuela, he's not a guy that's going to come up and play right now. But overall, decent trade for the Blue Jays on that one as well. They also were able to add Seranthony Dominguez, another relief pitcher from the Orioles, for I believe his name is Juan Watts Brown. And yeah, I mean, honestly, that was a funny situation in itself, because they played a couple of days ago on a doubleheader. And Sir Anthony Dominguez, for the first game, was a member of the Baltimore Orioles, and for the second game, he was a member of the Toronto Blue Jays. All he did was pack his bags and walk right across the diamond. So that was funny to see, and I believe he pitched in that game as well. So honestly, it was a funny situation to see. Jose Caballero, actually, now that I think about it, since we talked about the Rays first, he was traded mid-game as well. So, yeah, I mean, kind of funny. I kind of enjoy when those things happen because it's like, wait, me? I got traded to that team over there. So, pretty funny situation though. Especially, I mean, like I said, playing a doubleheader, one game you're with one team, the other game you're with another. It's like, wait, 2 hours ago you guys are my teammates. Now I'm dotting up fastballs on the corner to you. So, yeah, I mean, but overall, great deadline from the Blue Jays. I mean, I got no complaints there. Again, very solid deadline for them. They added some pieces that they needed, and again, you're going to see a recurring theme here with a lot of these teams that are going to be put in that solid deadline category or that winner category as well. Adding relief pitchers is going to be a huge thing here because again, relief pitchers help shorten games in October. And that is what all of these teams are gearing up for right now, October baseball, as they try to win a World Series. So overall, super solid from the Blue Jays as well. The next team we're going to talk about is a team who's the second best team in the American League, but they have been struggling as of late. The Detroit Tigers, they were able to kind of end their losing streak. A few days ago to the Blue Jays actually, but they needed starting pitching and of course again more relievers, and they were able to go out and get that. They added Charlie Morton from the Baltimore Orioles for a relief pitcher, and they also added Kyle Finnegan from the Washington Nationals, Paul Sewald from the Cleveland Guardians, who is injured. He should be back sometime, maybe late August, early September. They also added Rafael Montero from the Braves, and just a small trade with the Phillies, where they were able to acquire outfielder Josue Quinones. So, I mean, I think they could have maybe used another bat, but overall, they definitely added. Oh, and not to mention, prior to the deadline day, earlier last week, they did acquire Chris Paddock from the Minnesota Twins as well. So, I mean, overall, they add some pitching depth to the back of their rotation, and they add some relievers that can definitely, like I said, is a recurring theme. They're trying to shorten games, so adding a couple of those relievers, I think, is going to help them a lot, and just shoring up that starting rotation is going to be huge for them. They did lose Reese Olson for the rest of the season, so getting a guy like Charlie Morton and Chris Paddock to kind of come in and fill the gaps for them. Solid deadline for the Detroit Tigers as they try to not only regain the American League, um, you know, title of best team in the AL, but just try to get back to their winning ways. As of late, they haven't been as dominant as they were through the first few months of the season, but hopefully these new starting pitchers and relievers can kind of help turn the tide for them. Now, one more team that we're going to talk about in this category of the solid deadlines is the Kansas City Royals. They're only 3 games out of a playoff spot, and they definitely added some needed depth. Not too many big trades, but they did add Mike Yastrzemski from the San Francisco Giants. They also added starting pitcher Bailey Falter from the Pirates for a couple prospects, and then they also were able to grab Steven Kolek, a relief pitcher, and Ryan Bergert from the Padres for catcher Freddie Fermin. Now, the Royals, like I said, they're 3 games out of a playoff spot, and they did lose Chris Bubich for the remainder of the season. So adding a guy like Bailey Falter, he is going to be a solid get for them. He's a solid back end rotation pitcher, and like I said, he can definitely shore some things up for them. And they got some outfield depth and they got some pitching depth they needed. Didn't make huge splashes, but got exactly what they were looking for. So they, again, solid deadline for the Kansas City Royals. Now we're going to talk about the underwhelming deadline deals from some of the teams that I saw today. And we're going to start with a team in the NL Central. We're going to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers. while their first trade that we're going to talk about is solid, really, really solid, actually, if you ask me. They acquired Shelby Miller and Jordan Montgomery for a player to be named later. Now, this was more of a salary dump by the Arizona Diamondbacks. They wanted to get off the contract to Jordan Montgomery, and they attached Shelby Miller to it um, to kind of help alleviate that contract. Shelby Miller has been absolutely electric for the Arizona Diamondbacks this year. He stepped in when Justin Martinez went down for the season with an injury into their closer role, and he was exceptional. So right now he's on the IL, and he should be back within the next 2 weeks or so. And when he is back, if he's fully healthy, the Milwaukee Brewers got a great back end of the bullpen kind of guy, and he's definitely going to be able to shore some things up for them. And they also traded Nestor Cortez for Brandon Lockridge from the Padres. Not a, I mean, nothing special as far as Lockridge. He's not like a guy who's probably going to come up and play and be an impact bat for them. But I think that's exactly why it's an underwhelming deadline for me. They're obviously in a very tight race with the Chicago Cubs, but they just didn't do enough to separate themselves from the Chicago Cubs. They didn't widen the gap um, at all, if you ask me. Yes, Shelby Miller is a great get, but I mean, it they could have used another bat. Um, they could have maybe used another high-end reliever as well, because of course, like I always say when I talk baseball, you can never have too many arms. But I think they could have added an impact bat, and that would have helped them a lot more because they continue to pump out pitchers all the time. So not getting an impact bat at this deadline in that tight NL Central race, I think was a mistake for the Brewers. But the Chicago Cubs didn't have that impressive of a deadline either. They're right there. They're the next team we're going to talk about with underwhelming deadlines. So the Chicago Cubs, they acquired Willie Castro, super utility guy from the Minnesota Twins, who, again, we are going to talk about the Twins because very, very disappointed in that Twins organization right now. But like I said, they acquired Willie Castro, super utility veteran, switch hitter, good defense, good speed, but he can be a bit injury prone at times throughout his career. But is he a solid player? Absolutely. Is he what the Cubs needed? Probably not. They probably needed one more impact bat. And yes, Willie Castro has been having a pretty solid last few weeks. But when you're in the market for a guy like Eugenio Suarez and you end up with Willie Castro, you're disappointed as a fan. And I know that the Chicago Cubs fans that are going to watch this, you guys are a bit disappointed and underwhelmed by the deals made by the Chicago Cubs today. But the next trade we're going to talk about is they did actually do a couple of solid things. They added Taylor Rogers from Pittsburgh. He's not as good as his brother Tyler Rogers, but solid just to kind of shore up things in that bullpen. They also added Andrew Kittredge from the Orioles, and they were also able to acquire Michael Soroka from the Washington Nationals. Starting pitcher, gonna be able to help them out in the back end of that bullpen, or apologize, the back end of that rotation. But when you are a Chicago Cub general manager and you are in discussions for a Joe Ryan or a Sandy Alcantara and Edward Cabrera, um, you know, and you end up with Michael Soroka, it's highly disappointing. It's not what the fans and it's not what your organization truly needs, right? I think they could have definitely gotten a better starting pitcher. Again, even a guy like Merrill Kelly, who we talked about a little bit ago, he was a guy that the Rangers went out and acquired, and it doesn't seem like his price was too high. You could have acquired him. The Diamondbacks are selling everybody, so I feel like the Chicago Cubs could have definitely done a lot more. They definitely needed a starting pitcher, and to only end up with Michael Soroka, who his numbers are his expected numbers are better than his actual numbers, but again, you never know, right? What you're gonna get sometimes. So it's just a bit disappointing that was all that they did at this deadline, and I think they could have done more. So that's why they're here on this underwhelming segment of the trade deadline special for the Figures of Sport podcast. Now the next team that we're going to talk about is the Boston Red Sox, and man, do I feel for you guys right now, because man, that was brutal. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, the MLB on Fox page posted a graphic saying that Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins was traded to the Boston Red Sox. He, in fact, was not traded to the Red Sox. So someone's going to be in trouble big time for that one. Yeah, I mean, that is really, really tough. And then 5 minutes later, the news comes through that you traded for Dustin May, who has I believe, a 4.8 ERA this season. And you traded the number 10 prospect in your system, James Tibbs, and you got him in the Rafael Devers trade. Here's the kicker. Dustin May is a free agent at the end of the season. So you traded a guy who you just acquired a couple weeks ago or a month ago, and you got back a guy who is a free agent and has an ERA nearing 5. Yeah, not a great get for the Red Sox whatsoever. In my opinion, I just think it's more so the price that they paid more than the player. I think Dustin May has solid stuff, but maybe a change of scenery was needed for him. But again, when you see the news that you acquired Joe Ryan and then you find out that it's false and then you acquired Dustin May instead, you're upset as a Red Sox fan. So I feel for you guys, and yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of him being like your big get at this trade deadline. They did also acquire Steven Matz, a relief pitcher from the Cardinals, for a corner infield prospect, Blaze Jordan. But again, not a huge get. The Red Sox are in the thick of the AL East race and the wild card race, yet you added a all right relief pitcher and an all right starting pitcher. Yeah, I don't I was super disappointed, honestly, really really disappointed in the acquisitions made by the Boston Red Sox. Then um, then we're going to talk about now the Cincinnati Reds. They added Ke'Bryan Hayes from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Obviously, Ke'Bryan Hayes is a premier defender at third base. So he was a solid acquisition for the Reds because of the fact that he is going to provide them with excellent defense at third base. But the thing is, Ke'Bryan Hayes doesn't really hit the ball that much. He's not uh, a great hitter at the plate, and I think when you see that acquisition, it leaves some questions. They did acquire, like I said, Zach Littell, but they already have a starting rotation that is pretty solid overall. But again, another arm to kind of shore up the back end of that rotation is never a bad thing. But they also added Miguel Andujar from the A's. But again, I just think that the number one thing that they needed was better offensive prowess from their players, right? Or a better offensive production from the players that they acquire. And I don't think Brian Hayes really does that exactly for them, So it'll be interesting to see if maybe he can, uh, you know, learn some things in that organization and maybe try to maybe take a different approach or something along those lines to maybe kind of get into the groove of things with this new team. Maybe he needed a change of scenery. But the one thing I will say about that trade is the Reds do have a few years of control with Hayes. So getting him, like I said, he is going to shore up um, their defense at third base. But again, they needed offense, and they didn't necessarily get too much of that with Ke'Bryan Hayes. But that is the reason why they are kind of on the underwhelming portion of this trade deadline episode, honestly. So now here's where we're gonna have some fun. So the first thing that we're going to talk about the winners at the very end of the episode, obviously because they're the winners. We're going to go into a little bit more depth on some of the players that were acquired by some of these other teams. But the first thing I want to talk about is we're going to talk about the biggest losers of the trade deadline. And the first team that we're going to start with is the Baltimore Orioles. A couple years ago, they were a team that won 100 games, made the playoffs, won 0 games in the playoffs. Flashback to last year. Excellent season again. Won 0 games in the playoffs. Now you are trading everybody. You traded Cedric Mullins. You traded Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, Ramon Urias, Seranthony Dominguez, Charlie Morton, Andrew Kittredge. What is going on here? Yes, I get it. You still got Gunnar Henderson. You still got Jackson Holliday. You still got Adley Rushman. But outside of that, why am I so excited? Yes, you still have Kobe Mayo and Samuel Basayo coming. Okay, cool. But they're not here right now. And this was a team that just won 100 games and made it to the playoffs 2 years in a row, won 0 games, and instead, yes, I understand you guys are having a very poor season, but now look at what you have done to your fans. You guys lost 100 games. It felt like 10 years in a row, going through an incredible rebuild. That it was a dreaded rebuild for years, building up the farm system and then competing at a high level to now just become sellers again at the deadline. It's sad to see, but sometimes that's baseball. Baseball is a sport that can turn on you so fast. You can be at the top of the mountain one year and at the bottom of the mountain the next. And it's kind of why I love it. But I think just because of the fact that they got rid of so many players. I mean, again, like I said, Andrew Kittredge, Charlie Morton, Seranthony Dominguez, Ramon Urias, Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, Cedric Mullins. Like, these were guys that were solid contributors to your team for the last couple seasons, and now they are gone. So, just for trading everybody and doing this to the fans after such a long rebuild, it sucks to see. So Orioles fans, I'm so sorry that you guys got to deal with this again. And I truly do hope that you guys are good sooner rather than later, because trading everybody like this, I don't know if they're retooling or going to go into a straight rebuild again. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough second half of the season for Orioles fans. I'm sorry, guys. Now, the next team I want to talk about that was a big loser at this year's deadline was the Atlanta Braves. Didn't do much, if anything. They acquired Eric Fetty, who we talked about in the last episode, but Eric Fetty was DFA'd. So they got him for either a player to be named later or cash considerations. So, not a great get there. They also acquired Tyler Kinley, a relief pitcher from the Rockies, but didn't literally nothing else. That's it. So, I mean, when you see that, it's got to be frustrating as a Braves fan. You just get that NL East. It's tough to compete right now with the Mets and the Phillies at the top, but man, you guys did nothing. So huge loser in my book goes to the Atlanta Braves. The next team we're going to talk about is the Cleveland Guardians. And while they didn't do many deals, they actually traded two players who are currently injured anyway, in Paul Sewald and Shane Bieber. But I mean, the big thing for me is that the fact that you're 2.5 games out, you have a week back into your rotation, and you trade Shane Bieber. It doesn't make sense to me. So for that, I'm going to give them a loser score for this year's trade deadline. Just doesn't make sense what they did there. I think having Shane Bieber, even if he's a shell of himself, he might be a little bit better than what they've been getting at the back end of that rotation. Now, I've been saying it all episode. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Twins. What the hell happened? Man, I mean, they traded everybody. They probably would have traded me if they, if they could. Honestly, um, wow, they traded. Let just to count, they made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trades. 8 trades. The day of the for the MLB trade deadline. Insane. Yet the one thing that baffles me still is the fact that they traded everybody, but the pitcher with control, who is exceptional. He's been great the last few seasons and has control for the next few seasons, like I said, and has the highest value in Joe Ryan. They kept Joe Ryan and traded everybody else. So it just didn't really make sense to me. They traded Brock Stewart, a relief pitcher. They traded Carlos Correa and $30 million. Traded Harrison Bader, Yohan Duran, Griffin Jacks, Danny Collum, Louis Varland, Ty France, Willie Castro. I mean, my goodness. They traded, if I'm not mistaken, they traded more players today than they have on their active 26-man roster. After the trades, of course. But yeah, isn't that pretty crazy? Like, they traded half of a team almost in one day. Or 2 days, I guess I should say, counting Wednesday. Like, it's insane. The Minnesota Twins, what they just did. And then on top of that, like I said, I mean, one of the craziest things, though, is trading Carlos Correa and $30 million to pay his contract. Wow. Mind blowing, that one is. But yeah, I mean, the Minnesota Twins were a team that was, I mean, the last few seasons extremely competitive, competing with the Guardians and the Royals and the Tigers, and now they're just everyone is gone, like gone. And on top of that, guys like Griffin Jacks, Yohan Duran have control for at least the next 2 seasons, So, and they traded Harrison Bader, eh, Brock Stewart, like they traded almost every relief pitcher that they had of value, and then they traded Bader, who's been solid. They traded Correa. They traded, uh, I think at that point you're trading everybody. Why not go get a haul for Joe Ryan? You know, um, it just didn't make sense to me. I felt like if you were going to sell, then you should have sold, and you could have gotten at least some prospects maybe that were ready to play now. See what you have with them, or even build the farm system for the future if you were to trade Joe Ryan. So it just made absolutely no sense to me that you trade almost everybody that had high value and you didn't trade the person that had the highest value. Just didn't make sense. Was a little bit shocked by that, but again, um, I know the White Sox aren't competitive right now, but might not have to worry about the Twins for the next year or two, at least. I'm not complaining. But next team we're going to talk about, guys, is the Pittsburgh Pirates. Um, they made a few trades. I talked about one of them with the Ke'Bryan Hayes trade. And the Bailey Falter trade. But they also traded David Bednar, the relief pitcher, to the Yankees. They traded Caleb Ferguson, another relief pitcher. Taylor Rogers, I did mention, to the Cubs. But you know, the big thing for me was they didn't sell high on Mitch Keller. I think that they should have absolutely sold on Mitch Keller. Um, I think it would have been a smart idea for them to move off of him while his value is high, and possibly get back some prospects or big league ready talent that maybe you could bring in now and play them the rest of the season and see what you got with those guys. But I think that's why they're going to be on this biggest loser of the deadline portion of the episode, just because, like I said, I feel like they missed out on trading Mitch Keller, and I think that was a big disappointment from my eyes. So now the last team we're going to talk about, they're not really losers in a sense. But when we get into the winners and we talk about the team who I think is the absolute biggest winner of the trade deadline, you'll understand my perspective. The Los Angeles Dodgers are going to be the last team on the biggest losers of the trade deadline list. But the only reason, guys, please don't come for me. I promise I have a reason, a valid reason at that. It's because the Padres just got so much better. Um, they got so much better. Um, the Dodgers went out. They got Brock Stewart, as I mentioned, from the Twins for James Outman, and they got Alex Call from the Nationals, right? Alex Call, solid player. Brock Stewart, solid reliever. But when we get into the biggest winners of this deadline and we talk about the San Diego Padres, I think you guys will understand why I put them on this list. Now, don't get me wrong, the Dodgers have an excellent team, obviously. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Tommy Edman, Teoscar Hernandez, Shohei Ohtani, Max Muncy when he's back and he's healthy, Andy Pages. Like, they have an incredible team. And of course, I can't forget one of the best catchers in baseball this year, not named Cal Raleigh, Will Smith. So, I mean, they have an excellent squad, but it's just the fact that when you look at what the Padres did, they did so much more and got so much better that when you look at it through, you know, that lens, the Dodgers didn't do anywhere near as much. So they kind of lost this to the Padres in a sense. Padres sometimes take big swings and miss. Um, it just seems like the Dodgers played it super, super safe. Um, got a couple small pieces, nothing crazy, and they're going to call it a day. So I think that's why they're going to end up on the loser portion. But we'll put an asterisk next to the Dodgers on this list for you guys. But yeah, guys, I think that rounds out the biggest losers portion. Now let's get to the fun part. We're going to talk about the teams that were the biggest winners. And the first team I want to talk about is the Philadelphia Phillies. They acquired, as I mentioned before, Harrison Bader, Yohan Duran, both from the Twins in two separate deals. I mean, great acquisitions for the Phillies. I think they were big winners. They got one of the best, if not the best reliever probably available on the market. He consistently throws 100 miles an hour. He has a 2 ERA this year. I believe he has 16 saves for the Twins, and you know he's been great throughout his career for the most part, honestly. So a huge get for the Phillies to um, really shore up the back end of their bullpen and have a guy who can go out and immediately close games for them and be dominant as he has been throughout his career. So great get by the Phillies. They also had outfield depth with Bader, and then they added Matt Manning, another pitcher from the Tigers. Did what they needed to do. The reason I put them in the winner portion as opposed to just solid is because they were able to acquire one of the best relief pitchers available on the market, and a guy who's so dominant in Yohan Duran and who has been so dominant for the last few years of his career. So great deadline for the Phillies, especially when we talk about the Mets and we see what they did. So they have to be able to stay competitive in that NL East. Now the Mariners are going to be the next team that I talk about here. The Mariners had an incredible deadline. Didn't make too many moves, but they did make some really great moves. As I talked about in Tuesday's episode, they acquired Josh Naylor from the Arizona Diamondbacks for a couple of pitching prospects. Great get for them. Josh Naylor is a guy who has a high batting average. He has a little bit of pop in that bat. It's declined this year, but obviously playing in Seattle, which is usually known as a pitcher-friendly park, um, may not be as easy to kind of get that pop back, but it's fine because they just got Eugenio Suarez, who has 36 home runs this season. Yeah, he's got a lot of pop, so it's going to be really fun to see Eugenio Suarez back in a Mariners uniform with this team. I think comparing it to the team they had a couple years ago, this is a team that has a Cal Raleigh who is probably the front runner for the AL MVP, and a couple All-Stars in Julio Rodriguez, Randy Rosarena, offensively. And then now you add Naylor, you add Suarez to this lineup to go along with the guys that they already have. I think the biggest problem for the Mariners has been their offense, and now adding these two guys, and they have this complete offense. It is going to be electric now. So Seattle is behind the Astros in the AL West race, but this is a team that I think with those offensive additions, I think they can really make a run for that AL West title. Not to mention they also did acquire Caleb Ferguson, another relief pitcher, to kind of, again, like I said earlier, you're going to see a recurring theme here. Teams that want to win um, in October, teams that are trying to make the playoffs want to have bullpens, want to have solid bullpens so they can shorten the game and make sure that, one, they're not overextending their starters, and two, have guys that can come in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning and can shut things down and really shorten the game. So, the Mariners, excellent trade deadline in my opinion. So shout out to the Mariners for doing it right, man. They went out and got their guy in Eugenio Suarez, beating out teams like, the Yankees, who were interested before. The Brewers were rumored to be interested. The Cubs were rumored to be interested. So they beat out all those other teams. And on top of that, the return for Eugenio Suarez wasn't that much. So, and they were able to beat out some other teams. So, yeah, super solid get for the Mariners. Overall, that's why they're going to be in the winner of the deadline category, because of the fact that you got probably the best power bat available in all of baseball, and now your biggest weakness, which was offense, now suddenly seems to be potentially fixed. So shout out to the Mariners. They had an idea, they executed it, and they got their guys. So going to be really fun to watch this AL West race, as we see that the Mariners, the Rangers, and the Houston Astros are all going to be extremely competitive down the stretch. So super excited to see how that AL West race turns out. Now the next team we're going to talk about is the New York Yankees. So obviously we talked about some of these deals already. They acquired David Bednar from the Pirates. They also acquired Camilo Doval from the San Francisco Giants. Jose Caballero, who we did talk about, speed guy, steals a lot of bases. I think he's going to be useful for them in generating some runs for that team. They also went out and acquired Jake Bird from the Colorado Rockies, another relief pitcher. Again, shoring up that bullpen, making sure that they got guys they can count on, and are going to be available day in and day out to shorten that game and help them, um, you know, close out some wins. So that was another solid addition by the Yankees. Um, they also went out and acquired Austin Slater from the Chicago White Sox. They traded starting pitcher prospect Gage Zeal. So really hoping that Gage Zeal is a solid prospect for my Chicago White Sox. Shout out to Austin Slater for getting us a solid pitching prospect. Could be very useful in our future. So thank you very much for that. They also were able to trade Oswald Peraza, former high-ranked prospect for the Yankees, uh, to the Los Angeles Angels. But again, don't forget the Yankees did also add Ahmed Rosario and Ryan McMahon. You know, two solid guys that are definitely going to help them out. So overall, I mean, the Yankees had a great deadline. I mean, when you look at who they acquired, again, Jake Bird, David Bednar, and Camilo Doval, to already go with guys like Devin Williams and Fernando Cruz and Luke Weaver in the back end of that bullpen. Devin Williams has had his struggles this season as the Yankees closer, so getting some of these guys to really help out with that is going to be huge for them. And I mean, honestly, I do think that the Yankees are definitely gearing up to try to take back that AL East division from the Toronto Blue Jays. So it'll be very fun to see how that shakes up. But overall, again, Yankees are going to be huge winners at this year's deadline. Now, the next team that we are going to talk about is the New York Mets. Now, the New York Mets had an excellent trade deadline, yet they're still not the biggest winners of the deadline, in my personal opinion. And you guys will understand why real shortly, because we're going to end this episode with a bang. Um, if you don't know, you will now. So, the New York Mets, they went out and, like I said, had themselves an excellent trade deadline. I mean, they had, in my opinion, the second best trade deadline out of any team in the MLB. They acquired Cedric Mullins from the Orioles. They acquired Ryan Helsley from the Cardinals and the Giants' top reliever in Tyler Rogers. Not to mention, in the last episode, we also talked about the fact that they acquired Gregory Soto from the Orioles as well. So you add three great arms, two of them being left-handed relievers. So now they have two guys that they can play in the back end of that bullpen that are solid left-hand relievers. Then you go and you add Ryan Helsley, who, if I'm not mistaken, in 2024 led the MLB in saves with the Cardinals, and you have Edwin Diaz still. And on top of that, you add much needed outfield depth, probably in center field with Cedric Mullins. So, yeah, I think the Mets did really good, and they already are in first place in that NL East division. It's going to be tough to see how they lose that now, because it doesn't seem like they'll be losing that many games with that bullpen that they have. So, what an incredible deadline by the New York Mets. And as I said earlier with the Adolis Garcia stuff, if they were able to get Adolis Garcia too, that would have been pretty crazy. I can't lie. That would have been pretty crazy, guys. But overall, again, probably the second best team, or the second best performance at the deadline by any team in the MLB. And it's going to be really fun to see the Phillies and the Mets battle it out the rest of the season to see who takes home the NL East crown. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got, in my opinion, apologies, we skipped a team. We're going to talk about the Astros real quick. The Astros acquired Carlos Correa, bringing him back home from the Minnesota Twins. But on top of that, they also got $30 million to pay for his contract. Wow. I'm telling you, the Twins just gave everybody away, and then on top of that, they said, "Here, you know what? $30 million, take that." Pretty crazy if you ask me. But Carlos Correa, uh, it was a perfect match because of the fact that obviously the Twins were selling everybody, and the Astros got news that Isaac Paredes is probably going to be out for the remainder of the season, including the postseason because of a hamstring injury. Initially, they thought um, it wasn't great, but maybe a month or two, and then it turned from 2 months to 6 to 7 months. So, yeah, not great look for them with Paredes. He was having an incredible season as well, but now they're going to get back a guy who they love in Houston, and Carlos Correa. He loves Houston. He's excited to be there, and he's actually going to be shifting over to third base now to play alongside Jeremy Pena. Super solid acquisition from the Astros. Very happy with that. Great addition. Clearly what they needed very much, and they got it. But then they also went out and added Jesus Sanchez from the Miami Marlins. A solid acquisition. He's having a decent year as well. And in that lineup, maybe you see some of his runs, his RBIs, and maybe even his home runs kind of jump up now that he'll have a little bit more protection in that lineup. But then they also added Ramon Urias from the Orioles and more cash because 30 million wasn't enough, but they got more cash. And again, Astros did what they needed to do at the deadline, adding those players. Supposedly they were close to acquiring Dylan Cease, but things fell apart as the deadline was approaching pretty quickly, and they weren't able to get a deal done. But supposedly, I'm not too sure how true this is, but there was a rumor that one of the main reasons the deal was falling apart was because Dylan Cease didn't really want to go to Houston. So, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then that's why it fell apart. But I think they could have added another starting pitcher. But overall, one of the bigger winners at the deadline. They had a plan, executed it, and don't forget they should be getting back Yordan Alvarez hopefully pretty soon, and then this lineup is looking top to bottom, when fully healthy, pretty scary. So it will be interesting to see how some of these new guys fit this Houston Astros team. But now we're going to talk about, in my opinion, the biggest winner of the trade deadline, and we're going to save the last two moves that they made for the very end. But we're going to talk about the San Diego Padres. AJ Preller hates prospects, man. AJ Preller hates them. If you're a prospect, he does not like you. Um, so, yeah. Note to self, if you ever make it to the pros, don't become a prospect for the Padres because you will be traded. No, jokes aside, guys, they had an incredible trade deadline. I mean, fantastic trade deadline from the San Diego Padres all day long. AJ Preller was on the phone making moves. Trading prospects is really what he does, man. He puts his eggs into a basket and he makes sure that he is getting the guys that he wants. And we saw it with Juan Soto a couple years ago, and then Dylan Cease, and now couple other trades that we'll talk about in a second. But, first things first, they acquired Will Wagner, infielder from the Blue Jays. More of a depth acquisition. Same with the Freddie Fermin trade with the Royals that we also talked about. And we talked about Nestor Cortez, who they got from who they got from the Brewers. Again, depth. That was really what those moves were, depth. Now, one of the bigger moves that they made was they acquired Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano from the Orioles, right? Now, I know what you're thinking. Those are pretty good names, right? Laureano's having a solid season. O'Hearn is having a solid season. He was an all-star, right? That's still not the biggest move they made. They got back, they gave up a lot for those two. Boston Bateman, Brandon Butterworth, Tyson Neighbors, Cobb Hightower, Tanner Smith, and Victor Figueroa, all prospects to the Orioles. 6 six total prospects that they traded to the Orioles. So, I mean, quite a haul for the Orioles, yes, but you now acquired a first baseman and an outfielder at positions that you absolutely needed help at, and you were able to fill those holes with quality players. And I believe they are both under contract for at least one more season following this year. So it solid moves by the Padres right there. Not only getting depth, but getting a player that you are, or players that you are going to have beyond this season. So if I'm trading six prospects, I'd hope that they were for more than just the remainder of this season, than the next 2 months or so. So solid move by AJ Preller there. And now for the big bang to end this episode off, and to show you guys why the Padres won this trade deadline. They acquired Mason Miller, flame-throwing closing pitcher for the Oakland Athletics, and starting pitcher J.P. Sears in a blockbuster trade this morning. Honestly, it was one of the first things I saw when I woke up. Shocked me. Had to rub the crust out of my eyes to make sure I wasn't reading it wrong. Did not really expect it. But I think when I saw the haul, I was a little upset that they traded Leodalis DeVries, the number 3 ranked prospect in all of baseball, a shortstop, switch hitter, solid defense, solid offense. And, you know, I just think that it was a lot, but, because on top of that, they gave up 3 other prospects, all pitchers, Braden Nett, Henry Baez, and Eduarniel Nunez. Yeah, so I mean, 4 prospects for those 2 guys. JP Sears he's a guy that again is going to provide some depth for that rotation. And again, since they didn't trade Cease, as I had mentioned with the Astros prior to us talking about the Padres, they now have a rotation that when Michael King comes back, they have Michael King, they have Nick Pivetta, they have JP Sears, they may have Nestor Cortez, Yu Darvish. I mean, they have so many pitchers now. They can honestly, if they really wanted to, throw a different pitcher every single day of the week, Monday through Sunday, and come back fully rested that next Monday. Like, it's pretty crazy. And then on top of that, now adding Mason Miller, you already had 3 All-Stars in your bullpen, right? You add Mason Miller, that 6, 7, 8, 9 inning of a game. We talked about relievers being a huge thing. The Padres just went out and got the best reliever of, who no one even knew was available, and they got him. And now you add him to a bullpen that already had 3 All-Stars this season. Talk about incredible get by AJ Preller. And now listen, right? He traded a lot of prospects. I get it. He does it all the time. And now the biggest issue here is some of the teams, like, for example, I hate to use it for my people out there who are watching, and I know you're Cubs fans, but the Chicago Cubs, right? You could have gotten a high-level starting pitcher, but you want to hold on to some of your prospects. Look at AJ Preller. Yes, I understand that the Padres haven't won a World Series, so I can't say that he's right for doing it. I understand that entirely, but they've been close the last few years, making it to the NLCS, losing to the Phillies, who, yes, they made it to the World Series, didn't win, but they played the Phillies, who then went to the World Series in the NLCS. They played the Dodgers, who then went on to win the World Series in the NLCS. They've been close over the last couple of seasons, moving prospects at an accelerated level. Like, they trade prospects like it's nobody's business, but they are getting results. They are winning games at a consistent base on a consistent basis, and they're making pretty high quality playoff runs. Now, this is the year that, in my opinion, with the way the Dodgers have looked, and yes, they're a 60-win team, they're still the Dodgers, yes, but this is the year, and this is the time where the Padres can really, really shorten that distance between the Padres and the Dodgers, right? And adding guys like this, really kind of making sure that 1 through 9 in that lineup offensively, you are solid. And now your pitching rotation, solid. And your bullpen, solid. they're a team that really, and I don't really want to say it because I hate to say it, they don't have that many flaws right now after all of these acquisitions. They have offense, they have the defense, they have the pitching, they have the bullpen. Now, again, they haven't had Michael King in some months now. If he comes back fully healthy in the next couple weeks and is anything remnant of his old self, throwing strikeouts and going, deep into some games, then great. You've got a rotation and a bullpen and an offense that is excellent. So that's why I think the Padres are the biggest winners at this year's deadline. And listen, as I talked about the prospects, listen, if you're a prospect, that's what you are, a prospect. Sometimes it's a better idea to trade a prospect who you never know is going to pan out because, again, sometimes things don't translate to the bigs. You can be in the minors, killing it in double A, triple A, single A, and then get to the bigs and just stink it up. You never really know what's going to translate and what's not going to translate into the big leagues. And sometimes when you trade a guy, especially people were upset that DeVries was traded. He's the number 3 prospect in baseball. He's 18 years old. Exactly. That's the thing. He's 18 years old. In 3 years from now, when he's ready to come up to the bigs, who knows if that game is going to translate, right? And you never want to say that it won't because you want to see all these young guys succeed. But at the same time, when you have the opportunity to add proven MLB level talent, you have to be willing to give up something. And teams that don't want to do that, for example, the Yankees, the Cubs, other teams like that, it's the reason why maybe you haven't won a World Series or you're not getting as close to winning a World Series as you want to. So, maybe, sometimes, take a note out of AJ Preller's book. Yes, he hasn't won a World Series, but I think he's on his way there. With all the moves they just made, I really like the Padres' chances this year, guys. Now, we're going to end the episode on that, guys. Incredible episode. Really, really loved doing all this and getting everything laid out and talking to you guys about this. It was definitely one of my favorite episodes that we've done since we brought the podcast back, guys. But again, shout out to you guys for specifically saying you wanted this because I wouldn't know who wanted this. I would have just done it and cut it probably a lot shorter than what this episode is going to be because we got other things to talk about besides baseball. But, I really wanted to get this trade deadline special episode out to you guys because you guys requested it. So you guys ask and you shall receive. So huge thank you to all of the people that show the love and support to the Figures of Sport podcast and to me personally. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure that before you finish, you click out this video, you turn your phone off, you close your laptop, wherever you're watching it, you like it, you subscribe to it, you share it. Friends, family, everybody got to see it. So once again, shout out to you guys. You guys are the absolute best. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you supporting. Thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you on the next episode.